My name is Elena Ward. I'm 29 years old, and I've always been the responsible one in my family. It wasn't a title I wanted, but it became the foundation of my life, the moment my father died when I was 13. My hazel eyes have seen too much too young, and the quiet strength people sometimes praise in me formed from necessity, not design. I grew up in a home where money was always short, emotions were always high, and responsibility was always mine. I work 2 jobs now, a part-time retail manager position and part-time freelance design work. It's not glamorous, but it pays the rent on my small studio, keeps my bills in order, and gives me a world where I have control. I like control, or at least the feeling that I won't wake up tomorrow and drown under someone else's chaos. My mother, Marianne, is chaos in human form. She's emotional, dramatic, and deeply skilled at getting her way through a combination of guilt and martyrdom. My younger sister, Riley, was always the center of her world, bright, charismatic, and constantly protected from any consequence or hardship. In our household, Riley's needs came first, and mine didn't come at all unless they could somehow support hers. I didn't resent Riley for being the favorite. I resented the way my own life was treated as a resource to funnel into hers. Every extra shift I picked up, every dollar I saved, every plan I postponed, it all circled back to my mother's vision of Riley's bright future. The entire situation that followed began with a phone call on a Tuesday evening. I was at my tiny kitchen table, receipts scattered everywhere as I tried to prepare for quarterly taxes from my design work. My phone buzzed with my mother's name. A part of me instinctively braced. Calls from her usually meant a crisis, real or imagined. "Elena," she said breathlessly when I answered. "I need to talk to you. It's about Riley." It was always about Riley. "What's going on?" I asked. "We're short on tuition again. These universities and their criminals." She let out a dramatic sigh. "They added unexpected fees. If we don't pay, Riley could lose her registration." I stopped sorting papers. "Mom, I already sent money last month. You said that would cover things for a while." "Elena," she said in that tone she uses when she wants me to feel ashamed for not immediately sacrificing myself, "your sister needs stability. She can't afford distractions. She needs to focus on her studies." "I understand that, but—" "And she can't work while she's in school. She's not like you. She gets overwhelmed." Ah, there it was. I've always been the one who can handle anything, which in my family translates to, you don't get to have limits. "What exactly do you want me to do?" I asked. "Well," she said, drawing it out like she was carefully selecting words, "we need to sell some things. Your father's old collectibles, the vintage furniture, maybe some of your jewelry. You never wear half of it. Every dollar helps." My throat tightened. "You want me to sell Dad's belongings?" "Elena, don't be dramatic," she snapped. "Your sister's education is more important than old junk." Old junk. She meant my father's vinyl records, his camera, the dresser he spent months restoring, the pieces that kept him alive to me in ways memories couldn't. But I heard the accusation in her voice. Selfish. If I didn't help, I was selfish. "I'll come by Saturday," I whispered, and that promise dug the first shovel of the pit they thought they'd bury me in. When I arrived Saturday morning, the house looked more run down than I remembered. It sagged with neglect. My mother greeted me with exaggerated relief, while Riley sat at the kitchen table sipping a luxury latte, the kind that cost more than I usually spent on groceries in a day. She barely looked up as I walked in. "We should start in the storage room," my mother said briskly. The storage room was a graveyard of my father's life. Dust-covered boxes, stacks of books, neat piles of old electronics, and the familiar smell of aged paper and wood polish. We spent hours sorting items we didn't need, while Riley lounged in the living room with her phone. My mother justified every item she pushed into my hands. "That's just clutter. Your father would want Riley to succeed. This is what family does." One by one, I listed and sold pieces of my childhood. Each sale felt like a small betrayal of my father, though I told myself it was for a good reason. I told myself my sacrifices mattered. I told myself I wasn't being taken advantage of. Then came the day I brought over cash from selling my father's vintage camera. Riley was at the kitchen counter, latte in hand. "So, textbooks again?" I asked lightly. She blinked. Textbooks. That's what Mom said this money was for. Riley frowned. Oh, no. I haven't needed textbooks since last year. Everything's digital. The crack in the facade was subtle but unmistakable. That night in my journal, I wrote, "Something is wrong." I became more observant. Riley was home far too often for someone supposedly in full-time classes. She never mentioned exams or assignments. She slept late, watched shows, hung out with friends, all at times she should have been attending lectures. Then I stumbled across her laptop, left open on the dining table one afternoon. Dozens of job listings filled the screen, not internships, full-time positions. "Looking for something new?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay neutral. She jumped like I'd caught her stealing. "No, just looking around." But panic was written all over her face. I knew then. Not the full truth yet, but enough to understand something serious was being hidden. I needed confirmation. I called the university's registrar office under the pretense of verifying expenses for tax deductions. I expected them to stonewall me, but the woman on the line looked up Riley's status. "I can't give specifics," she said, "but I can tell you she is not currently enrolled. Would you like a verification letter sent?" My heart pounded. "Yes, please." When I hung up, I didn't cry or rage. Those emotions come later, after the facts settle. Instead, I folded the phone shut, wrote in my journal, and began to plan. It took 2 weeks for the letter to arrive. If someone had found me at my mailbox that morning, they would have thought I was holding a small bomb, the way my hands hesitated. Inside the envelope, the university letter read, "This letter confirms that Riley Ward has not been enrolled since the end of spring semester. 18 months ago." 18 months. Everything I had sold, everything I had paid, every guilt trip, every lecture from my mother about responsibility, all of it rested on a lie. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, staring at the letter, feeling the tight, suffocating pressure of betrayal and decades of conditioning pressing against my ribs. But I didn't explode. I didn't even raise my voice. Quiet strength isn't glamorous. It's controlled, cold, strategic. I pulled out my journal, then I pulled out my laptop. I created folders, one for bank statements, one for screenshots of transfers, one for sales records, one for notes with dates and conversations. I assembled the truth piece by piece, like a crime board. My mother called multiple times during those 2 weeks, her tone increasingly impatient, almost frantic, asking when I'd have the money again. I ignored her messages, letting her stew. For once, the silence was my power. When I had everything, I invited them for dinner. They arrived irritated from traffic and snapping at each other. Classic. They didn't notice the thick folder on my coffee table. I waited until they settled, and then said calmly, "Before we eat, I have something important to discuss." My mother rolled her eyes slightly, like she expected a lecture on boundaries or something equally inconvenient. Riley looked nervous. It confirmed everything. I slid the university letter across the table. The color drained from my sister's face. My mother snatched the paper, eyes darting across the page. She froze. "Elena," she said, This is some sort of clerical mistake." "It's not," I said evenly. "Elena, you don't I understand perfectly." I opened the folder. One by one, I laid out the documents. My bank statements showing transfers, receipts from item sales, the list of belongings I'd given up, screenshots of messages where my mother asked for more money for classes, the notes I'd written with dates and inconsistencies highlighted. With every page I laid down, my mother's expression twisted deeper with panic. "Elena, how could you? How could you?" I asked. Riley began crying first, big, shaking sobs. "I dropped out," she admitted. "I couldn't handle it. I was failing. I told Mom. She said not to tell you. She said you'd freak out and stop helping." I nodded slowly. "So for nearly 2 years, you both lied to me. Manipulated me, used me." My mother tried to regain control. "We needed help, Elena. You're strong. You've always been strong. Your sister could have told me the truth," I said. and you could have respected me enough to ask for help instead of conning me. The room filled with tension so thick it felt like the air was solid. Then I delivered the part they weren't expecting. I spoke with a lawyer. Both of them froze. "Elena," my mother whispered, "don't you dare turn this into what it is," I asked. "Financial fraud, exploitation, misuse of assets. You lied to obtain money and property. You pressured me to sell things that weren't even yours." Their faces collapsed in horror. "I'm not taking you to court," I said, "unless you give me a reason to." I took out the document I'd had drafted, a repayment agreement, itemizing the total value of what was taken. It wasn't vindictive. It was calculated. It was fair. "You're going to sign this. Riley, you're going to get a job. Mom, you're going to pay back what you can every month, and you will return or replace anything you still have. If you refuse, I file everything." My mother's voice cracked. "You'd ruin your own family?" "No," I said softly. "You ruined this family. I'm just ending the cycle." Riley sobbed into her hands. My mother stared at the paper like it was burning her skin, but she knew there was no escape this time. Not from the truth, not from me. The agreement was signed within the week. Riley found a job, her first real one. It humbled her. My mother started sending monthly payments, sometimes small, sometimes late, always followed by a strained apology. And me? I recovered pieces of my father's belongings. A few buyers were kind enough to return them after I explained the situation. Holding his old watch again made me cry in a way I hadn't allowed myself to cry in years. I didn't press charges. I didn't expose them publicly. I didn't need to. Truth was enough. Truth rearranged the power in our family without me having to raise my voice. Now our relationship is distant, but honest. Honest is all I ever wanted. In the quiet of my tiny apartment, I journal each night. I write about boundaries, about self-worth, about growing out of the role I was forced into. I'm not angry anymore. I'm clear. I've learned that family doesn't get to drain you in the name of loyalty. Love isn't measured by sacrifice, and boundaries aren't walls. They're doors you choose who to let through. I turn 30 soon. I don't know what my future looks like yet, but for the first time, it belongs to me. Not to my mother's expectations, not to Riley's needs, not to a lie built on guilt. It's strange how freeing the truth can be when you finally stop being afraid of it. My nuclear revenge wasn't loud or messy. It was simple. I stopped playing the part they wrote for me and forced them to face the reality they created. Silence can be a weapon. Evidence can be a bomb. And sometimes the most devastating revenge is simply refusing to be the victim anymore.